Last time in the Gospel of Luke, we were in Luke chapter 6, where Jesus began to talk to his disciples as there were great multitude around on the mountainside on this particular occasion. And Jesus began to tell his disciples about the blessings of those who would serve God and the woes against those who would serve themselves. And now, in Luke chapter 6, picking up in verse 27 today, Jesus has another lesson for his disciples and for us as his disciples today. Notice he says there, "But I say to you who hear, love your enemies." Love your enemies. Jesus taught some hard things sometimes. Jesus commands some hard things sometimes. And this is probably one of the hardest. Is loving our enemies, loving those who do not love us, loving those who mistreat us. But this is one of the things that we are commanded by God, by Jesus, to love others as God loves everybody and wants all to be saved. It's what he's talking about here. Notice he says, love your enemies, do good to those who hate you. We're not often quick to do good for those who hate us, usually. But Jesus tells us to love, to do good, to bless those who curse you, pray for those who spitefully use you. We don't like it when we have enemies. We don't like it when we have people that are against us. We don't like it when people hate us. We don't like it when people curse us. We don't like it when people spitefully use us. But Jesus says to love, to do good, to bless, and to pray for them. To him who strikes you on the one cheek, offer the other also. Do not seek retaliation. And from him who takes away your cloak, do not withhold your tunic either. Be willing to give. Give to everyone who asks of you, and from him who takes away your goods, do not ask them back. Be willing to give, and to give wholly, completely, without expecting anything in return. And just as you want men to do to you, you also do to them likewise. As you want men to do to you, you also do to them likewise. That's loving your neighbor as yourself, loving your enemies as yourself. He goes on to explain, verse 32, that if you love those who love you, well, what credit is that to you? For even sinners love those who love them. If we only love those who love us and are good to us, well, that's not really anything special. That's easy. That's natural. But God calls us to an even greater way of thinking and feeling and acting, a greater standard. And if you do good to those who do good to you, what credit is that to you? For even sinners do the same. And if you lend to those from whom you hope to receive back, what credit is that to you? For even sinners lend to sinners to receive as much back. It's easy to do good and love those who do good and love us. But God isn't calling us to do easy things. God isn't calling us to do what comes natural. God is calling us to do amazing things, hard things, but the amazing things of God. Because, as he says in verse 35, but love your enemies, do good and lend, hoping for nothing in return, and your reward will be great, and you will be sons of the Most High. And doing this, the reward will be great. We will be sons, children of the Most High God. For he is kind to the unthankful and evil. Think about that. God is kind to the unthankful and evil. The sun shines on the good and those who are not good, the just and the unjust. It rains on the just and the unjust. And Jesus uses that to tell us we need to love people and serve people just as God does. And that's not just the good ones. It's the not so good ones. And here's what it's about. Therefore, verse 36, be merciful, just as your Father also is merciful. Full of love and mercy, compassion, care. That's what God has done. That's what God did when he was willing to send Jesus to this earth. That's what Jesus did when he was willing to come. That's what God and Jesus did when Jesus died on the cross. Not for good people, but for sinners like all of us. We don't deserve it. It's not a deserved love. It's not an earned love. It is a unchanging love. Love your enemies, do good, bless, pray for them. Be like God, love like God, serve like God. Yes, with the hope that all will come to God. But Jesus teaches us, commands us to love our enemies, to do good, to bless, to pray, to give, expecting nothing in return, being loving servants of God by loving and serving others, even our enemies. Let's think on that a while. Let's examine ourselves and ask ourselves, are we doing that? Is that how we're treating those who may be against us or curse us or spitefully use us? Or is this something we need to work on? Is this something I need to keep reading several times and keep working on? Keep at it. Keep growing in this kind of love, in God's love, even when it's hard. God bless.